Oi cunts, and welcome to the second installment of Vindictive, a series where I explore the various cancers across the many platforms of the internet. Really quick before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to thank this commenter for the tip. Thanks for the assist. Today's punching bag will be a small fish compared to what I started with, and that person is the professional white knight, Steve Shives. And yes, I'm aware I can't say much when I'm sitting at 8 subscribers, but the fuck are you gonna do? So with that small amount of subscribers and even smaller consistent views, who is Steve and why is he so despicable? Well, first for brief context, something Steve really won't need, seeing as though it doesn't matter. And if you'd like to view conversations like Steve does, click here. But if you're still wondering how I found Steve, I stumbled across his inane content back in early 2016. His channel consists of reading books through the lenses of an atheist, talking social justice and feminism, and starting shit with any dissenters. Well, what's better than feeding the masses manipulative horse shit like the mouthpiece you are? Well, if you ask Steve, it only comes second to being his wife's favorite sock puppet. But his useless input aside, this is an issue I have with more than just Steve, more his ideological views, and I'll just focus on his pushing of the narrative of rape culture. This vicious logic that every male is looking to sexually assault you, and not only does the government not care, but it encourages it, telling women the world round that you are constantly a victim and there will always be someone looking to victimize you. Playing on a legitimate fear that women have to evoke more paranoia is beyond a low action to commit. But not only is it low, it's hypocritical. If you think feminism is so wonderful, then why are you continuing to further the divide between the sexes through blatant fear-mongering? Making women think that the only comfort that they have is in a white knighting cuck like you. That's a shitty pickup line. And much like a drunk in a bar, you seem to have the need to convince everyone how right you are, and do it in the most belligerent and condescending way possible. This needless apostizing and moral posturing only shows how scared you are to grow as a person and admit when you're wrong. But that's only a start with Steve's fuck-witted attitude. So when all else fails, what's left for a thick-skulled SJW like Steve to do when logical arguments arise? Why block and even preemptively block people who might possibly come with those arguments, and then label it as harassment. Now I could run around the argument of what is a legitimate point, what's criticism, and what is shitposting, but I think that's quite discernible to find amongst yourselves. And yes, to add, he uses a fucking block bot. This type of shit is just sad. Anyone who presents him with criticism is either responded to with posthumous ignorance, labeled a troll or a harasser, or you guessed it, blocked. And the wonderful truth is, as quickly as he'll go for you in one way, he'll back any horseshit that comes out of the collective mouths of his constituents. For someone who has a Friday show solely based on interacting with the comments of his viewers, he sure can interact with anyone who doesn't completely align themselves with him. A very good example of this alignment issue is when he saw fellow creator Lacey Green step out into forming her own opinions, and starting a dialogue with those who disagreed with her. And instead of following her example like the good little boy he is, or at least wishing her luck in her venture, he instead doubled down on his fuck-headed logic and smug arrogance, saying something to the effect of, he'd rather befriend someone who could delete all their channels. And for a rational thinking human, seeing this type of response needs no more reason to want to lay hands on him. But for a Muppet looking cunt like Steve, he thinks it's normal. Not many things roll this man, except his wife, feminism, social justice, atheism, being a cuck, so on. But I must say, fanatical is an understatement. This shit is apparently what defines him. Devoting the entirety of your channel's content to being a leftist extremist can be excused. Not really. But seriously, this is essentially somebody you would see on the corner of a busy street shouting Bible verses, while only taking breaks to shout, "Repent thy sins," for 10 minutes straight. How susceptible he is to following this shit like gospel, the absolute lack of free thought, and the funny thing is, it all contradicts itself. The fact that he's an atheist, with a hard-on for critiquing religion, yet is too ingrained in social justice to go after Islam with equal measure, in fact defending the religion on multiple occasions. And anyone who decides to criticize the actions or ideals of his favorite religion is an Islamophobic, bigoted racist. Really makes you question his integrity on his ideology and his beliefs. No better example of this can be found but in a time of tragedy. A video titled, "What Do We Do After Orlando?", where he talks about the Pulse nightclub shooting, an event where an alleged member of ISIS shot and killed 50 people. Now I'll leave a link to the video in the description for those of you who want to see the full video, because I'm only going to touch on a few things he said in it. In fact, only the first 5 minutes of it. It begins innocently enough, but as we get not even a minute in, he talks about how he wanted to talk about this as a gun control issue. But then he saw the hate going towards Muslims, as he saw all the Islamophobes come out of the woodwork. But he continues on to say that he felt it wasn't fair to the gay community and trans community to make this about either of those issues. But note that he negates this statement by leaving those first 3 minutes in, even adding, "At At this point in America, Sandy Hook didn't change any minds, this wouldn't either. And then goes back on it once more 30 seconds later, talking about how it's wrong to make this event into a means to make people animus towards Muslims. Shit goes needless to say. And yet, it's at least 40% of the video's content, either asserting that this is a gun control issue in small ways, or assuring that he doesn't want this to be an anti-Islam topic. Regardless, if you're looking to do a video about how your heart goes out to those affected, and you'd like to see how you can help, leave your political bias out of it, you doddering fucking oaf. You know, I find it kind of fitting how your most pleasant memories are voting for Obama twice, and wearing a pussy hat at the Women's March. I see that when left to his own devices, his wedding seemingly slips his mind, but most definitely remember those superfluous actions that have no effect on the world around you. With all that said, I don't really feel like more needs to be presented. While yes, it could be, I don't see it being as major as what I've presented thus far. In summation, he's a mindless puppet with a myriad of mentally devoid people alongside him every step of the way. While I'd love to go after him a little longer, I'd rather not devote any more of my time to this slovenly dressed excuse of a human being. And finally, I'd like to say, fuck you, Steve, you balding, ball cap wearing, smug, bug-eyed cunt. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed or have any criticism or objections you'd like to say or add, feel free to do in the comments down below. Later, cunts.
As you know, and as I have said before, I think, of the two series, I prefer Angel to Buffy. Do you think that's because I'm a sexist? Whether I intend to be sexist or not, do you think there's like there's like sexism involved there?
Yeah, and you know why? Because Angel is about a guy, and you identify as a guy, I'm sure, with a male